Howdy my totalies, always Tubular Gamers, we're back with, you guessed it, yes I know you guessed it, another video. And for today's video we got a fun topic. We're going to be talking about games that are just too damn short. You probably know exactly what I'm talking about, where you're playing a game, you're really loving it, maybe you enjoy the story and the characters, or maybe the gameplay is just so much fun and all of a sudden it's over. Yeah, the game's done just like that and you go, man, I really wish there was more to this game. While nowadays it seems like most games just go on and on and on, and it feels like they try to squeeze as much out of you as they possibly can, here are 10 games that I have personally chosen that in my opinion do the opposite. They don't squeeze enough out of you. These are, in my opinion, games that actually could have benefited from being a bit longer. While it's nice that these games don't take up a third of your life to complete like some modern games, I wish there was a little bit more to these games, and it could be for a number of reasons. That's really what we're going to get into today. But you know what's not too short? This intro. It's gone on long enough, so please like, share, comment, subscribe. Let me know down below how you're feeling about this list, some games that you think are too short. I got the Patreon and the super thanks. Any support is truly greatly appreciated. Seriously, thank you all very much, especially if you've been hopping in the streams. I really do appreciate it. I got the Twitch link down below. We're trying to get Twitch affiliate out here. Alright, let's just get to the games. Now, when coming up with games for this list, the first game that immediately came to my mind was Super Hot.
Super hot. Super hot.
Now, if you don't remember Super Hot, it was particularly popular around the mid to late 2010s. It is the very minimalist first-person shooter that only moves when you move. When you're standing still, pretty much the rest of the world is also standing still. You die in one hit, but so does everything else. And it's basically bullet time the video game. At times it even feels like a puzzle game, as you gotta figure out who to go after first, when you're supposed to move around, and even using the environment to your advantage, like using a pool cue. And it absolutely works. It really does come together. There are very few, if like any, games that play anything like this at all, and it's a ton of fun. The presentation is excellent also. While it very much does go for that minimalist approach, this is one scenario where I think it really thrives. It excels thanks to that approach. Everything is clear, concise, and well presented to you. And the sound design is equally as good as bullets whiz past you incredibly slowly. The biggest issue though with Super Hot is it's short. It is damn short. I remember when this was a browser game and you could finish it in under like 20 minutes, but this full release is around 2 hours long, maybe 2.5 if you're really taking your time. Yeah, it's just not a long game. You're here for a good time, not a long time. You can easily beat the game in one sitting like I did, and it really is a fun experience. After you beat the game, you unlock an endless mode. But yeah, this is one game that I really wish was a lot longer. All of the levels are great in it at the very least. There's a ton of variety, they all feel different from each other, and it really is super fun. At the very least, there was a sequel a number of years later, Super Hot Mind Control Delete, which is a little longer and has some roguelike elements, but man, Super Hot is a title that I've always wished was like twice the length that it is. It really is that great of a time. If you like first-person shooters and you're okay with the game being around the 2-hour mark, this is one you absolutely should check out. So a game that came to me just as fast as Super Hot for this list was Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. I very much remember when this game came out. I was still in high school. I went to go pick it up after school that day. Went home, started playing it, and nearly beat the entire game the day it came out. I remember the next day I ended up beating it and just going, really? That's it? That was the entire game? I thought this game was going to be like double the length that it ended up being. I finished it in under 6 hours. I remember I was actually kind of mad. I didn't have disposable income or a job or responsibilities or anything like that. I had saved up for weeks so that I could get this game, and I just beat this game in 2 quick sittings. But I enjoyed the gameplay so much that I actually just ended up playing through the entire game again, but on the harder difficulty, which I think is kind of the point with Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. It's short, but they want you to replay it, which can make some sense, but man, I wanted this game to be longer. I wanted way more from it. I wanted more boss fights, levels, crazy set pieces. Like, this game was awesome. The gameplay goes so hard. It is a fantastic hack and slash, and all these years later, it's still one of the best in the genre. It's one of Platinum's best. It's very close to being their best game in my opinion, but man, it's just too short. And I know that they added DLC with like Jetstream Sam and the dog, and it adds like another hour or so to the game, but even with that, I still think it's too short, and that point could be made for a lot of Platinum's games. I remember Mad World felt really short. Bayonetta 2 isn't the longest, especially when you compare it to 1 and 3. And then Transformers Devastation, yeah, I'm bringing that one back up, man. It was just too short. But back to MGR for a second. Something else you gotta remember is, even with the game's length, you still do watch a decent amount of cutscenes, much less than the normal Metal Gear game, but you're not actually playing the game for those full 5 to 6 hours. But when you are, oh, it is such a great time. I love the hack and slash combat in this game. I guess at the end of the day, it's one of those short but sweet experiences. I just wish it could have been a bit longer. Maybe then my high school self would have been happier with his purchase. So another game that came to me pretty quick wasn't really just one game, but rather an entire series. I just want to throw Sonic on there. There are plenty of great Sonic games that are just way too short. Sonic Generations, Sonic Colors, Sonic Lost World. Okay, that one's not great, but other Sonic games would also have benefited from being even just a little bit longer. Sonic Forces probably would have been a better game if it was even a little bit longer than like the 3.5 hours it takes to complete, you know, as long as those levels were actually pretty decent. I know with Sonic it's a little harder to ask for longer games for a few different reasons. You know, they make a bunch of long ass levels, but you run through them so damn fast that you end up finishing the game rather quickly. And there is the possibility that it totally could drag out the entire experience, like say Shadow the Hedgehog or Sonic Heroes, but man, I just wanted more from these games. Another one I'll bring up is Sonic Mania. While that one actually is a decent length for a 2D Sonic game, at the same time you can still finish it in under like 2 or 3 hours. And really, at the end of the day, I just wanted more from these games. They were just too damn short. I finished them incredibly quickly, which might be the point since they're Sonic games, but I very much think that they could have benefited from even more levels. I'm not talking about like another 2 or 3 hours worth of levels out here. I mean, that's like almost the whole length of the game. I just mean like another hour. Another few levels here and there, and I know that that absolutely could disrupt the pacing of the entire game. But hey, I like these games, I wanted more of them. Sometimes it really is as simple as that. But hey, at least you know with the games I mentioned, you're in for a really fun evening or afternoon. But that's all they're going to be, since, yeah, they're not very long games. Alright, so here we got a really obvious pick for a list like this. We have the original Portal. Now, the original Portal is an absolute certified classic. It's universally loved and praised, but we could all agree the game could have been a little bit longer. Yes, we would end up getting Portal 2, which is a much longer, more complete experience overall, but that original game, I remember just being blown away when I finished it back in the late 2000s and going, man, I really wish the game was a lot longer. I wish there was more test chambers, maybe something else thrown in there. Just something. I really just wanted more. I think most people wanted more. Yes, it's great that the game is around the 1 to 2 hour mark, and it is a fantastic experience with amazing pacing, but shoot, even just another 5 test chambers would have added a little bit more to it. I mean, how could you not want more of it? It was ridiculously good. The puzzles were incredibly thoughtful. The game's concepts were really cool. It looked nice. It had a good sense of humor, and above all else, it was just wildly entertaining. But unfortunately, it's like the length of a movie. I remember that there was even an achievement for beating the game in under an hour. It really was that short. And I know you might be going, well, it was part of the orange box. It came with Half-Life 2, Half-Life 2 Episode 1 and 2, and also Team Fortress 2. You should be lucky you got this at all. Maybe I'm just being greedy here. I mean, shit, this entire list might be me just being greedy. It's a miracle that a lot of these games even came out to begin with, but that doesn't mean I can't want more of them. I wanted more from Portal 1, and that feeling's never gone away even with Portal 2. Portal 2 actually does have a decent amount of content. It is easily 2 or 3 times the length of the original game, especially with the co-op levels, but damn it, we don't need just more Portal 1. We need more Portal 2. We just need some more Portal in general. I love how just thought-provoking the puzzles are, the gameplay is really unique, and it all just really came together. I'd love to see some more Portal, but unfortunately Valve seems allergic to the number 3, and I don't think we're going to be getting another Portal game anytime soon. I'd love to see more Portal in literally any capacity. So TikTok Valve, I'm still waiting for more Portal. I mean, I'm also waiting for more Half-Life, but I've really been waiting for some Portal, damn it. So here we got another game from when I was in high school, and that is The Darkness 2. Now, I was pretty excited for this one. It looked like a really violent, fun first-person shooter, and it absolutely is, but I remember when I was done with it, it was another one of those times where I just went, really? It's over? Thankfully, I didn't buy this one. I actually rented it from Redbox, and I planned on playing it for the entire weekend, but I ended up finishing the entire game in one sitting. It was like 4 hours long, if that. And yeah, it's a great FPS for those 3 or 4 hours, seeing you play as Jackie, the head of a mob boss with supernatural abilities, and it's incredibly violent. You just rip enemies to shreds in this game. This is a gory, visceral, violent game, and I really love the abilities you get. It was just a whole lot of fun destroying everything in this game, and the story's really intriguing, and I was really interested in where it was going to go. And then the game ends. It ends on a cliffhanger. We've had no Darkness 3, and at this point it's pretty clear that we're not going to be getting a Darkness 3, and that's a real shame. This game could have easily been double the length that it was, and I think it still would have been excellent. Like, the gameplay actually had a decent amount of depth, and it was just so much fun. I've come back to this game a few times over the years, and it's never not a good time. It really stands out from most first-person shooters, especially from the era, thanks to its visuals, the unique story and vibe, and the supernatural abilities really do add to the overall game. Yes, there was also the Darkness 1, but I wanted more from the Darkness 2, damn it, and now we're not going to get any Darkness anything. I'd be shocked if we even got a re-release of either of those games. Maybe in a few years, Night Dive can help us out, and when they do, everybody can come to the same conclusion that I did, which is, man, this game is really great, and I wish it was a lot longer. And so here we have what is probably the poster child for a game that's just too damn short, and that is Star Wars The Force Unleashed 2. I very much remember when this one came out, and I remember everybody throwing a shit fit over it, and it's really not hard to see why. Now, The Force Unleashed 1, it wasn't that long, like 5 to 6 hours, but it was well paced, and it was a pretty good Star Wars game. The Force Unleashed 2, though, yeah, it had a number of issues to it, but the biggest one by far was that the game is just ridiculously short. You can finish it in under 4 hours. It is around the 3 to 3.5 hour mark, and it's not even all that well paced either. Sure, there's some cool set pieces, but the entire game, like the entire game, from the gameplay to the progression to the story, it all just feels incredibly rushed, and by all accounts, it was very rushed. And it's clear they just weren't given the time that was needed for this one. It should have been like double the length that it ended up being. Then it would have been around as long as the first game. It really should have been like as long as the first Force Unleashed. But all that coulda, shoulda, woulda, what if scenario doesn't really matter at this point. What we got at the end of the day was a very short game that, even at its very best, was still pretty disappointing to most people. Funny enough, I remember with this one there was actually 2 different endings and you got to make a choice, and the game was so short that yeah, you might as well just replay the entire game again to make a different choice. I mean, it'll be even quicker the second time you play through it. Not that any of this really matters, especially at this point. I am a little surprised though that Disney hasn't dug up Starkiller yet. Just give it a few more years. You know they will. So here we got a bit of an older title. We have Pokemon Snap, released for the Nintendo 64. You remember this one, right? The one where you take pictures of the Pokemon. It ended up getting a sequel like 20 years later. Well, we're not talking about the amazing, and I really do mean amazing sequel, but we're talking about that original game. Now, I absolutely love this game as a kid, but I always hated just how short this game is. If you want to play through this entire game, 100%, get a picture of every single Pokemon, it's going to take you less than 2 hours. At most, it'll take you like 2 or 3 hours if you really have absolutely no idea what you're supposed to do, but it's not a long game by any means. Sure, it's incredibly replayable with how short it is, but it really is like criminally short. It doesn't even have the original 120 Pokemon in it. It has like 60 something to it. And a number of these Pokemon end up getting repeated throughout some of these levels. This is another one of those scenarios where the game could have been 2 or 3 times the length that it ended up being, and I still think it would have been a really great game. I also understand it did come out in a totally different era. Games weren't expected to be 10, 20 hours long. But even with that, geez, some of the Pokemon movies with commercials are longer than the entirety of Pokemon Snap. But not all is lost. Like I alluded to at the beginning, we did get a sequel to this game, New Pokemon Snap, which is significantly longer. Like, we're talking 10 to 15 hours. It's a long game, and oh, it is glorious. I love New Pokemon Snap, but the original game, as great as it is just too short. Well, hey, it's not just older games. We do have a few modern games on here. Here we have the Resident Evil 3 remake. Plenty of people have gone very in-depth about how this game is too short, and Well, I agree with those people. Even though I still think the 3 make is a good game, it's not a great remake, and it's also not a complete remake either. Certain sections like the clock tower are just totally missing, other sections feel incredibly rushed, and I feel like the game would have been much better than it ended up being if it took its time a little and actually recreated the entirety of Resident Evil 3. They didn't have to bring the choice system back, but I think another hour or two really would have gone a long way with this game, especially towards the beginning. I feel like Nemesis isn't in his normal form long enough. You only see him in his normal form for like 2 hours. Maybe 3 if you're really taking your time, then he switches to one of his bigger forms. I really would have liked to have seen more of him in his more, iconic form, that starter one, really let it sink in that he's hunting you, but no, they really just go for the big explosions pretty quick here, and the entire game can be finished in around the 5 or 6 hour mark. To give a comparison, that's like how long it takes to finish one side of Resident Evil 2. I mean, if you're taking your time, it'll take even longer than that to finish one side for RE2, and you're supposed to play through the game as Claire and Leon. This game just doesn't have that kind of replayability. It feels a little rushed, and I just don't really know why they cut out so many sections from the original game and really didn't have anything to supplement it, so yeah, we just get a shorter experience. And it's a shame because the gameplay that does show up here is actually pretty good, and I was a bit surprised when it ended as fast as it did. So for this entry, I actually have a double header. I have Katamari Damacy and Beautiful Katamari. Both of these are excellent games in the Katamari series, and both of them, yeah, they really are just too short. The original Katamari Damacy is around the 4 to 5 hour mark, and while it is a really fun, great experience, I've always wanted more from that original game. I get it though, it was incredibly experimental, it was a bit more budget than what Bandai Namco was usually putting out, and I get it, they probably didn't want it to be a really long, ambitious experience. It was more like, hey, just throw it out there, maybe it's 4 or 5 hours long, let's see how the people react, and then obviously everybody very much liked it, and the second game was a bit longer, but I think the original game could have used a few more levels to it. I'm not saying it had to be like double the length that it is, but I think a few levels would have gone a long way for this one. Beautiful Katamari though, this game is just way too short. You can finish it in like under 4 hours. You can finish it in like 3 hours. I was pretty surprised with how quick I played through this one. I beat it in one sitting and went, wow, really? It's that short? I played through all of the levels that quickly? I'm not even good at Katamari. There's just not a lot to this game. Sure, it looks nice, it's a ton of fun, and there's these other challenges that pop up, but this was just way too short. Like, why is this newer Katamari game shorter than even the original? Did they just run out of ideas? That is a very real possibility though. This game not only needed more levels, but just more content in general to it. We would end up getting Katamari Forever, which is easily the biggest Katamari game of them all. It has like almost all of the levels from the prior games, and it's actually pretty lengthy. But the OG and Beautiful, it just needed more to them. Like the Katamari itself, they needed to add more to the ball. The king was not necessarily pleased with this one's length. I still love this series though. It is absolutely fantastic and it's a whole lot of fun. That's why I want more of it to begin with. Okay, so the last game for today, and it's another modern game, it's another first-person shooter, it is Shadow Warrior 3. Now when it comes to the modern Shadow Warrior games, they're all of varying length. I remember the first one was like around the 10-hour mark, the second one was around the like 7 to 10 hour mark, and then this third one was like 4, maybe 5 hours long, and I just remember immediately thinking after I finished it, that was just too short. I could have used another few hours of that one. The gameplay is actually really solid in Shadow Warrior 3. Yeah, it does try to be a bit like Doom Eternal with really movement-based gameplay and glory kills, but I found it to be incredibly enjoyable. A lot of the weapons felt great, the kills were awesome, the level design's pretty good, and the story wasn't half bad either, but the game moves at a really fast pace, and I'm not talking about in the gameplay, I'm talking overall. The game goes from one location and set piece to the next like that. It really keeps things moving, and while that is really nice, at times it makes you wonder, did they just like blow their load super early and the game's gonna end early? Well, kind of, yeah, the game does end rather quickly, and I think this one would have absolutely benefited from another area or two. I know that's a lot to ask for a whole nother area, but if the game was going to be moving as fast as it was, then yeah, at least one more area to go through. But like many of the other games I've discussed today, it is incredibly replayable. If you find yourself really enjoying the combat of Shadow Warrior 3, you can easily play through the entire game in like 2 or 3 hours on a second time. But when everything is said and done, shoulda, woulda, coulda been longer, It doesn't really matter. This is the end result. This is what we got. And while I do enjoy all of these games, yeah, I wish they were all longer. What do you think should have been a longer game? What's a game where you wish you got more out of it? Let me know down below. I'd love to know. Maybe if there's enough games, or if I can think of enough games, I'll even do a part 2. But as always, if you made it to this part of the video, you know what to do. Today's word is Costco. You know why it's Costco? Because that's where I'm going next. So I'll see you all later. Hope you stay safe, y'all. Bye-bye now.